agent, and my book, My Private War, Liberated Body, Captive Mind, a World War II POW's journey will be published by Pegasus Books on the 8th of November. I would like to read you an excerpt from my book about our mission to Berlin, an experience that forever changed the way I look at life and at death and at the unpredictable turns of fate. I was the last one to bail out of our B-17 bomber alive that day. It was around noon on April 29, 1944, and our target was Berlin. Big B, we called it. It was probably the most heavily fortified city in Germany, with thousands of accurate and deadly 88mm anti-aircraft guns pointed at the sky, pointed at the Allied planes that came to drop their bombs on Hitler's glorious city, pointed at my bomb group, the 447th, pointed at my squadron, the 708th, pointed at my plane, the Mississippi Lady, pointed at me. When our pilots started the B-17's four powerful Pratt & Whitney engines, the tremendous force of the backdraft made it impossible to climb on board without holding on to the side door and pulling yourself inside. As he gunned the throttle higher, the plane began to buck on the hard stand like a restrained animal, and the roaring engines made me think of Pegasus as I imagined four huge winged horses raring to break free. Anyone who has fought in a war can think of many times when death was cheated because of the slightest change in plans and routines and circumstances. I can recall scores of times when, had fate not intervened, my mother might have found an army chaplain ringing her doorbell. Such an incident took place as we began our mission to Berlin. As we flew over the English Channel, my ball turret gunner, Little Joe Guida, came into the radio room and sat on my chest chute, which was just in back of my chair. I could understand why he did it. It was a hell of a lot softer than the hard, cold floor of the plane. But I turned and said, "Little Joe, don't sit on my chute. What if I have to use it today?" Annoyed, Joe tossed the chute across the radio room and it landed next to the door leading to the bomb bay. "It won't hurt the darn chute to sit on it," he said. As it turned out, if Little Joe hadn't tossed my chute across the room, it would have been consumed by flames, because later, fire started in the exact spot where my chute had been lying, and I would have had nothing to bail out with. I never got to thank Little Joe for saving my life. A few minutes later, this sweet little kid from Brooklyn was dead. He was just 19 years old. We didn't begin to encounter flak until we crossed the German border, and then it was sporadic. As we flew deeper into Germany, the sky began to fill with black puffs of smoke as flak shells exploded all around us. Any idea that these bursts were innocuous was quickly dispelled with the occasional ping of shrapnel fragments bursting through the aluminum skin of the plane, with the sound of gravel being thrown against a tin roof. Then incoming fighters were reported, and then the pilot began to call each gunner off the intercom to check if he was firing at the attacking Me-109s. I was shooting my overhead gun in the radio room when he called for me to report. I got out two words, "Yes, I," when a burst of flak that must have been right on top of us blew a hole, a huge hole, just above the desk where I'd been sitting, and fragments splattered all over my body, knocking me down and ripping off my throat mic. When I abruptly stopped talking, the pilot knew that I was hit, and I heard him yell, "Norm's hit. Somebody from the waist get in there and help him." I could feel blood running down my face, my leg, and my rib cage, but I didn't believe that I was gravely wounded, so I snapped my throat mic back on as quickly as I could, and I said, "I'm okay, guys. Repeat, I'm okay. Stay with your guns. I'm getting back on mine." I had just started firing at another fighter when our plane was rocked again, and I was thrown against the side of the ship. As I stood up, I realized that I was no longer getting any oxygen. And then I saw the flames behind the chair, and my plane's skin began to drip molten aluminum. It was surreal to watch the aluminum skin, the metal that appeared to surround us so protectively, suddenly drip, drip, drip like soldering lead. My plane was melting before my eyes. Obviously, our oxygen lines were burning because the fire was so intense. I tried to use the intercom, but it was dead, and I never heard an order to bail out. Flying at 28,000 feet without oxygen can do weird things to your mind. I seemed to be moving in slow motion. With the plane burning around me, I didn't feel rushed or afraid, nor did I sense any danger. In fact, my impaired brain even flirted with the idea that the flames would go out and we would fly back to England. After all, our engines were still intact, still emitting their low, powerful, steady tone. I opened the door to the waist to see if I could help anyone back there, and I was confronted by a solid wall of flame. I tried to peer beyond it, but I could see nothing. As I slammed the door shut, I heard explosions inside the radio room, and I felt powder burns on my face as the raging fire caused my ammo to cook off. The blasting of the 50 caliber shells jerked my ammo belt so violently, and it danced like a large metallic snake writhing in the flames, contorted with anguish. I still didn't think about bailing out. The plane was flying along on a smooth, level course. I realized that the intercom was out, but I never even heard an alarm bell. The pilot was still controlling the plane. What I didn't know was that the plane was set on automatic pilot, and I was flying with 4 dead buddies as my sole companions. I decided to head for the cockpit to see if anyone there needed help. First, I hooked on my chest chute, and as I opened the forward door, I saw that the bombs had been salvoed, and the bomb bay doors were wide open. I looked down, and far below, I could see layers of clouds. As I stood in the doorway, I turned and looked through the huge hole in the left side of the ship and saw that the flames had engulfed the entire wing. The wings, of course, are where the plane's fuel is stored. By now, my clothing was on fire, and I knew I'd never make it up to the cockpit. I stepped out onto the catwalk in the bomb bay, and for a brief instant remembered my famous last words, "I'll never bail out. I'll go down with the plane first." And then I jumped. I began to count to 10, delaying pulling my ripcord so that my flying suit would stop burning. I was falling on my back, and I could see the ship moving slowly away. I reached the count of 7 when the ship veered wildly out of control, then exploded into a million burning pieces. I had been 7 seconds away from eternity.